Welcome back to the Security Bros. I'm Ken, this is James. What's on your mind?
Probably most of you never think about the rules and regulations that kind of affect your everyday life. But the thing is, they do affect your everyday life in forms of cost, which gets passed down to you. But most of the time, it's not directly. It's almost always in an indirect form or fashion, right? The cost, like I said, always ends up trickling down to the consumer in some way or the other. You know, the government's going to put these regulations in place for, say, handicap accessible bathrooms. Well, all of that kind of costs more. Eventually, somehow, and the cost of business will get passed down to you. So that's one where we could probably all agree, you know, you want the handicapped folks to have a nice accessible bathroom. The question here is, having a lot of rules and regulations, is this just a cost of living in a developed, civilized society? Or, you know, as time goes on, are we dealing with just layers of unnecessary red tape and regulatory bloat? We see a lot of things where maybe it shouldn't necessarily be a regulation. What is the real added benefit of that? Or is it just something that's been lobbied for and has been put in?
In terms of the rules, regulations, is licensing, those things can become so obscure when people aren't really sure how to make that work. In our industry, some people avoid bothering going into it at all. And then that leads to less competition, which leads to the contractors that are in the industry being able to jack their prices up a lot higher. Like, we can charge a lot more for our service just because a lot of people don't want to go into this business, because figuring out how it all works, it can be very frustrating. A lot of people just don't bother. But that means that the ones that are left do get to charge a lot more, and then consumers end up paying that price.
It's not always very clear as to what certain regulations are. You may have to get a lot of information from different sources, or you find out when you meet with the building inspector that, oh, this particular county wants this particular thing or something, right? The wheelchair accessible bathrooms, I think we can all agree that these are a good thing. But they can also add major costs in certain areas, and also, in some cases, just not even make sense. We have a friend who owns a business in Annapolis. They had all kinds of handicap accessible regulations that he had to follow and money that he had to spend. But the kicker with this was the building itself wasn't handicap accessible and was immune from whatever those typical rules would be because of, I guess, some historic clause or something, right? So the wheelchair couldn't even get in the building, but they had to rip a bunch of stuff out, put a bunch of stuff in for this bathroom. It didn't really make a lot of sense.
The wheelchair can't get in the building, but they're making the bathroom wheelchair accessible, not the building.
And made him spend a bunch of money to like remodel this whole bathroom, take a bunch of stuff out. So that's one where you have good conflicting with kind of some common sense. And I start having some problems in that area. Fire alarms and sprinkler systems in commercial buildings. I think we generally agree this is universally a good thing. Sprinkler systems in single family homes is something in the last several years that, honestly, I haven't done a lot of research on where it came from, but it has become a rule in the state of Maryland, where all new stick-built single family homes or modular homes have to have a sprinkler system. Yes, it does benefit the homeowner, but it also just benefits the companies that install these systems, right? So everyone's complaining about the cost of living getting higher, cost of housing, but in a case like this, where you're just regulating more costs that go into building a home, it's one thing to have it as a recommendation, but say if I want to build a house, I don't think I should be regulated and told by the government, oh, I have to have a sprinkler system in my house. The homeowner and the person who builds it should be able to decide that for themselves.
It definitely increases the cost by more than the current price of a sprinkler system. The reason being that once it's regulated that you have to have it, contractors, including contractors like us, will take advantage of that. That's what you do. If you are now worth this much money, you charge that much money.
Well, it's a certain thing of demand.
Once the demand is now higher, as you say, because it's been regulated, it's artificially made that demand higher. It happened in the fire alarm industry. That's why fire alarm systems cost so much more than other types of security systems. It's not that the fire alarm devices are more expensive than security devices. Actually, in many cases, they're way simpler and they're mass produced probably for way cheaper because they have to be used and because they're very simple. They can actually be made very cheaply. A lot of them are made from a fairly cheap plastic. There's nothing particularly special or new or modern about them, but they cost way, way more than other types of security systems. I mean, it's crazy the amount that people end up having to spend for fire alarm. There was one time a client, they needed a quote for a fire alarm panel by Siemens. Siemens wanted to charge them, gosh, I think it was $15,000 or $20,000 just for this control board. And all the control board does is receive like signals that there's a fire, and then it activates an alarm, similar to a burglary panel. In fact, a lot of burglary panels can in fact do fire detection as well, but the burglary panel is only going to cost maybe $500. But that same thing, if it's called a fire panel, is going to cost you maybe $15,000 or $20,000.
And it's a very simple fact that it's a system that is regulated to have to be in a building. So you don't have a choice. You have to buy it. It's like a combined monopoly with the companies and the government. You have to put this in there, and everyone's like, cool, we're going to charge this much. They don't have a choice.
Yeah,
because the government won't sign off on your building getting opened until you have that in there. So that's how it happens.
And then if you're a contractor, like the contracting business we have, we would be an idiot to charge like this much when everybody else is charging way up here. Of course, we're also going to charge that as well. It's absolutely going to make it so that a lot of people who could almost just afford a house today will not be able to afford a house after this happens. That will be the end result.
Yeah.
If they...
I literally got into an argument with a guy that works for a company installing sprinkler systems. She was like, there's no way this is going to raise the cost of putting a sprinkler system in a house. He's like, yeah, they're not that bad to do right now. I was like, as soon as they get regulated, it's going to cost so much more because it's going to be the same thing that happened in the fire alarm industry.
Well, the question is, what do you think? Did you enjoy this video? Because if you did, like it so we know and share it so your friends know. Bye.